We're now following through with the Mandela Day theme. I'm now joined by Yase Godlo. He's the manager of the Nelson Mandela Day. Good afternoon to you, Yase. Very warm welcome to you on A Closing Bell. What do you have planned for the day?
Good afternoon, Mashudu. What we have planned for the day tomorrow is actually a whole lot of activities that are happening in South Africa and all over the world. And personally, the Nelson Mandela Foundation staff are going to be joining some of those, which will be some soup kitchens, will be knitting, there will be some donations of food, and all of this we do to our stakeholders.
And, you know, looking at this day, it's no longer about Mandela Day celebrations and the hoo-ha around it. There's a bigger message here. It's all about unity and selflessness.
Oh, that is very true. That is very true. It is exactly about that. I think Mr. Mandela's legacy has lived beyond a lot of what people have now come to personalize and understand that it is about a lifestyle, it is about giving and making sure that we leave this legacy beyond the 18th of July and make every day a Mandela Day.
And Yase, looking at developments here in South Africa, we know that Nelson Mandela, like you said a little earlier, or the Nelson Mandela celebrations are just not here in South Africa, they're abroad. So globally, people will be celebrating Nelson Mandela Day. But if you bring it back home, we've had the xenophobia attacks. And I don't think Nelson Mandela would have liked to see any of that happening. But how have you, as the Nelson Mandela Foundation, brought in Africans who are in South Africa to tell them really that they can join in these celebrations?
The Nelson Mandela Foundation has actually engaged in a dialogue and in other spaces on the same issue, that is xenophobia. And we recently just had a dialogue where we brought in stakeholders, and also there were some representatives of people from in Africa. And in those dialogues, it was when we were reminding South Africans and Africans that this is not how we can celebrate such a great legacy, not just as South Africans, but as Africans.
And there's also a lot of hype around this day. And a lot of people criticize it. There's a money-making scheme. Should we not leave people to do their own thing on the side, or is the hype really needed at this stage?
The hype comes because of the name, that is Mr. Nelson Mandela. And the hype will always come because a lot of people are getting involved. I guess it's also understanding that there's gaps and opportunities. But as the Nelson Mandela Foundation, we also have to safeguard in ensuring that his name and his trademark is not commercialized, because it is important that we go back to understand that the ethos and the values of Mandela Day, it is about selfless giving, about servitude, because Mr. Mandela also lived according to 3 rules, which were free yourself, free others, and serve every day.
Well, can you give us some examples of what the Nelson Mandela Foundation has been doing, especially in terms of your outreach programs up until this day?
In our outreach programs, we've been involved particularly around education and literacy through our Mandela Day libraries, where through a different of our stakeholders have engaged in that space. We've been placing container libraries. And we have been also engaged in a lot of other outreach programs. And quite recently, actually, we were at a school for the blind in Pretoria, where we went and took Mr. Mandela's Braille book of the children's version. So those are other ways that we have ensured that we leave the legacy and we make every day a Mandela Day.
Thank you so much, Yase. That was Yase Godlo. He's the manager of the Nelson Mandela Day.